Serpent's maw doesn't just kill pilots, it devours them. Tonight, one dares to fly into its teeth. Phantom Unit 714 operators, 3 already bleeding out, were pinned inside a collapsed relay bunker, deep in the maw's shadow, ammunition low, voices fraying. They knew the truth: this gorge was a coffin carved from stone. Not because command wouldn't send help, but because no pilot alive would enter twice. The maw had a reputation. It swallowed machines, men, and myths. Wait, where are you watching from? Soldier, drop your city below. Subscribe to Valor Untold, stand with us, and keep the stories alive. For the seals inside. It wasn't just silence pressing in, it was the kind that meant the enemy was waiting. Patient, knives sharp in the dark. No drones overhead, no backup plan, no extraction window, just static and blood. Until someone at Outpost Orion 7 caught it a transmission, ragged, clawing through interference. Viper, lead to command. Contact east, 3 men down, requesting, then nothing. The comms officer froze. His voice fell to a whisper that came from Serpent's maw. Every map on the wall went still. The maw hadn't been on active rosters since the last rescue barely clawed its way out, leaving wreckage and funerals in its wake. No pilot had ever gone back. The gorge was a nightmare, shifting crosswinds. Cliffs so sheer, the sun barely reached the valley floor, and worse, an enemy phantom jammer flooding every frequency, killing GPS and satellites. 2 drones were gone. A Kiowa scout never came back. Pilots called it by a simpler name now, the maw. A captain leaned over the map. No aircraft in theater is rated for that corridor. It's suicide. SAMs on every ridge. They'll cut her out of the sky before she even hits the canyon floor. Another officer asked. Then we wait for nightfall. The SEAL liaison shook his head. They won't last that long. They're bleeding out. They're boxed in. The tent held its breath until General Marcus Vale spoke. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He asked one question: do we have anyone who's flown the maw before at first? No one answered. Then, reluctantly, a voice came from the back. There's one. All eyes turned. She flew it 2 years ago. Solo. Under 150 feet. They said it couldn't be done. What's her status? Vale asked. Grounded. Directive from upstairs after her last run. Vale's jaw tightened. Where is she now? On the far edge of Bloodvale Plateau. Captain Elara Voss sat on a rust-stained bench, staring at a gutted Warthog engine in Hangar 4. Her name was still on the roster, but her access codes stripped. After her last run, dragging 12 SEALs out of the maw in a battered A-10 command had clipped her wings. She hadn't fought it. She hadn't protested. She simply waited. Boots planted on the same concrete. Day after day. Now the call had come. Not to her directly, but close enough. Chief Calder, the only mechanic who still trusted her, walked past, wiping grease from his hands. He stopped, met her eyes, and said one word: Serpent. Elara rose. The decision was already made. Captain Elara Voss didn't ask how many were still alive. She didn't need to. A signal punching through the maw's jamming was proof it was already worse than anyone dared admit. She rose without a word and walked toward the line of aircraft under the overhang. No ceremony, no hesitation. Her storm was already moving. There it was, her old bird, scarred, forgotten. The A-10C Warthog, Ironveil 1. The fuselage wore its history like an old warrior's scars, one panel unpainted from the last canyon run. Scratches carved across the wings, a machine that had bled and refused to die. It hadn't flown in weeks. It wasn't cleared to fly today. Didn't matter. Chief Calder looked up from the floor. He froze half a second, then stepped aside. He'd seen her do this before, take a crippled beast and drive it through valleys designed to kill. If Elara was climbing into Ironveil, everyone knew something was about to happen. She hauled herself into the cockpit like a soldier returning home. Systems groaned alive, sluggish, almost resentful. Half the avionics still tagged for inspection. Diagnostics incomplete. She ignored them. Her hands worked faster than the machines bypassing lockouts, forcing the Warthog to remember what it was. Fuel 70%, stabilizer erratic, cannon armed. Countermeasures limited. It would fly. Not well, not pretty, but it would fight. "This is Ironveil 1, she said into the radio, her voice flat, steady, requesting immediate takeoff. Emergency response. The tower stuttered back. Confusion in the controller's voice. "Ironveil, you're not scheduled. Identify yourself." Elara didn't respond. She pushed the throttles forward. Engines roared awake, rattling windows across Bloodveil Plateau. By the time officers realized what was happening, the Warthog was already climbing into the night sky. From the tower, a young officer ran to the glass. Who the hell just took off? The commander didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on the radar as a single blip dropped low, then vanished. He whispered almost reverently, "She's airborne. If Phantom 7 is still alive, they might just stay that way." Serpent's maw didn't greet her with fire. Not at first. It greeted her with silence. And silence in war was never peace. It was a trap breathing just beneath the rocks. Elara adjusted the trim manually, feeling the stiffness in the controls. The Warthog hadn't been updated since her last run. Every push of the yoke fought back. Every nudge of the rudder carried weight, but she wasn't flying on software. She was flying on memory. Ahead, the gorge narrowed to its cruelest stretch, barely 300 feet across. Crosswinds violent enough to flip a transport. To make it through, she would have to dive low, beneath thermal lock range, where stone and shadow pressed so close it felt like the earth itself wanted to crush her. The altimeter ticked down. 210, 190, 160. Alarms screamed red across her HUD. She silenced them with one flick. Useless noise. She didn't need warnings. She needed silence. Then she saw it movement on the ridges, too sharp to be wind, heat signatures clustering fast across her HUD. The kill box was already built, and she hadn't even reached the seals yet. Elara pressed the comms. Ironveil to any Phantom units. "Do you copy static?" Then a broken voice cracked through interference. "Ironveil, God, it's you. We thought Elara shoved the throttle harder." Her voice was ice. "Yeah, so did they." Below, Phantom Unit 7 lifted their eyes toward the canyon mouth. A gray blur streaked overhead. Engines howling, one whispered the impossible, "She's here." And when Ironveil dove, the air itself recoiled because Elara Voss hadn't come to fly. She'd come to fight. Elara locked onto a cluster of heat signatures along the ridgeline and didn't hesitate. The GAU-8 Avenger spun up like a thundersaw, spitting a storm of depleted uranium. The canyon convulsed. Stone shattered. Dust and flame erupted. One SAM team vanished in the blast. She exhaled once, steady, and keyed the mic. Ironveil moving to intercept second group. From below, a fractured voice crackled. "East face. We can't see them moving in the rocks." Elara banked left, dropping another 20 feet. Wingtip carving a scar of dust across the cliffside. She knew the moor's terrain better than any map. Every fold, every crevice. She felt its contours in her bones. There, movement at the edge of a boulder field. 4 fighters sprinting between shadows, trying to reposition before her next pass. She gave them no chance. Manual targeting. No lock-on, just instinct. She squeezed the trigger. The Avenger barked fire. Dust and rock erupted, swallowing the fighter's whole. Her cockpit lights flickered. Warnings pulsed red. Fuel sliding below half. Stabilizer lagging. Ironveil rattled like a wounded beast. Not yet. Elara whispered. Hold with me, old girl. The Warthog trembled, but obeyed. At Outpost Orion 7 radar showed nothing she was too low to track. The comms tent was silent, officers leaning closer, listening to her voice cut through the static with the Avenger's thunder behind her. She's alone in there. One muttered. General Vale shook his head. Not for long. Because Phantom Unit 7 was moving now Hope Reborn, dragging themselves toward extraction. 2 clicks out. Still bleeding. Still hunted. But no longer hopeless. Above them. Ilara's voice rang out Ironveil to phantom eyes on your route. I'm with you all the way. On the ground. Viper Lead answered with steel in his tone. Roger that, Ironveil. Show them what fear looks like. And she did. At 200 feet, margin for error vanished. The stabilizer light blinked once, then died completely. The left throttle stiffened, fighting her hand. Every second in the gorge risked tearing Ironveil apart. But she stayed. Not while Phantom 7 still breathed. 3 SEALs hauled a teammate missing a leg, while another poured suppressive fire up the eastern slope. Their evac zone Point Orion was the only flat ground for a landing, and a death trap without cover. Without her, it was suicide. Elara dropped lower. Her wingtip brushed stone. Not bravado necessity. The deeper she flew, the less chance enemy launchers had to track her. Every pass bled Ironveil closer to death. She opened comms. Ironveil to command. Visual on Phantom. Extraction zone is hot. They'll need cover before the birds arrive. Static. Then a young controller's strained reply. Ironveil, you're not cleared for active CAS. Return to base immediately. Her lips curved. Part fury, part defiance. I'm already in the fight. Review me later. No answer. Only silence. And high on the ridges, through haze and fire, she glimpsed something too still to be another fighter. A figure. Watching. Elara's grip tightened. She banked hard. Lining up another run. Keep her channel clear, General Vale ordered. His voice like stone. If she calls for help, you give her everything. In the moor. Elara lined up her run. The eastern ridge was alive 7 hostiles. A heavy crew and distortions on her scope that screamed of a mobile jammer. That explained it all, the blackout, the dead GPS, the silence. No oversight, deliberate design. Her altitude alarm shrieked. She killed it with one flick. Cold. Focused. She armed the Avenger manually. The targeting system was gone. What came next was instinct alone. She steadied her breath and pulled the trigger. The GAU-8 roared. Rock disintegrated. The heavy weapon team vanished. The survivors scattering into cover, already crumbling around them. Elara yanked the stick back, Ironveil clawing upward before banking wide for another run. Viper Lead to Ironveil. We're 3 mics from the zone. You cleared us a path? Keep moving, she replied. Voice steady. They'll regroup fast. Her HUD flared red countermeasures offline. Flare system dead. If another missile came, she would have to outfly it, and then it came an infrared flash streaking upward from the western ridge. She didn't panic. No frantic dive. Instead, she rolled Ironveil into a spiral, hugging the canyon wall so close stone scraped paint from her wingtip. The cliff itself broke the missile's lock. The warhead detonated 50 meters behind. The shock wave slammed her fuselage sideways. The left engine coughed smoke, then caught again. Stay with me. Girl, stay. Ironveil groaned but held. Still flying, still in the fight. On the ground. Phantom 7 reached the flat stretch of Point Orion. Command, this is Viper Lead. We're at the LZ. Request immediate extraction. 2 Chinooks inbound. Command snapped back. 3 minutes out. Above them. Elara circled like a hawk, scanning every ridge. The valley reeked of dust and cordite. Fuel sat at 30%. Engines burned hot. Still, turning back never crossed her mind. Ironveil to Phantom. She called. You've got 3 minutes. I'll keep the sky clean. Already did. Viper Lead growled. She made another pass. Slow. Deliberate. Daring hidden fighters to move. For the first time in hours. Silence settled, not defeat, but the silence after a storm. The first Chinook dropped low, blades whipping dust into cyclones. Seals loaded their wounded under covering fire. The second bird circled above, waiting for green. But Elara's gut clenched. Too quiet, too staged. This wasn't retreat, it was patience. Her thermal optics flickered, then steadied. 3 faint blips emerged on the southern ridge, too far to strike the seals directly. Unless... Her chest tightened. They weren't aiming at the team. They were aiming at the birds. She didn't wait for permission. She shoved the nose down and dove. Inside the Chinook. The crew chief shouted warnings. Pilots jerked their heads up just in time to see Ironveil screaming down like a meteor. At the last instant. She leveled and unleashed the Avenger. Thunder tore the ridge apart. Fighters scattered like leaves in a firestorm, but one stayed. A single streak arced skyward missile lock, straight for the second Chinook. Elara saw it. No flares, no countermeasures, only one choice. She slammed the throttle to max and cut across the missile's path. The lock shifted. Now it chased her. At Orion 7 telemetry lit red. She's engaged pursuit vector. She can't outrun it. General Veil leaned closer, voice low. No, but she might outthink it. Down in the moor, with a missile screaming on her tail, Elara Voss dropped lower than she ever had before. By the time Elara clawed back toward Point Orion, the first Chinook was already climbing out of the moor, blades hammering the night like war drums. The second bird lifted seconds later, dust twisting below like smoke escaping a battlefield. Phantom Unit 7 was alive, bruised, broken but alive. Elara circled above, eyes narrowing. The ridge patterns didn't feel like retreat. Too disciplined, too coordinated. This wasn't a rabble of fighters. This was something colder. She keyed her encrypted channel, Ironveil to command. Southern ridge is dirty. Recommend intel sweep. Whoever staged this wasn't hunting the seals, they were hunting the aircraft. The pause on the line said everything. Finally. A clipped response, copy, Ironveil. Drones en route. Ironveil limped home. Hydraulics bled out. The altimeter flickered. Fractures crawled across her HUD. The landing was brutal. The nose strut buckled. Wheels shrieked. The bird bounced hard before collapsing into silence. Elara killed the engines and climbed out before the ground crew could reach her. They swarmed with questions she ignored. Oil streaked her flight suit. Sweat carved lines across her face. She walked straight past them, eyes fixed on something only she could see. At the hangar's edge, a black SUV waited. 2 plainclothes officers. No insignia, no words. Just a quiet command, Captain Voss. You'll come with us. They didn't take her to a normal debrief, not even the main compound. Instead, the SUV rolled through triple-gated security into a windowless facility pilots whispered about. Few who entered returned. Inside one table, one folder. Across it sat a man Elara had never seen older. Still, with a calm more dangerous than rage. You violated a no-fly directive. He began. Entered a dead zone without clearance, engaged without authorization. Flew an aircraft not cleared for duty. He opened the folder. voice flat. And you saved 14 lives, destroyed multiple combat teams, and prevented the loss of 2 high-value helicopters. Elara said nothing. You don't look concerned, the man remarked. She met his gaze. I've already had the worst day of my life. This wasn't it. The man studied her, then slid another file across. Inside was an infrared still of Ironveil mid-dive, but the detail that mattered wasn't the Warthog. It was the figure on the ridge, not uniformed, not fleeing, just standing, watching. That's not one of ours, Elara said quietly. No, the man replied. And it's not the first time. Same posture, same place, always during your flights. You think they're tracking me? We think they're testing you. He closed the folder and pulled something from his case. Not papers, a patch, black fabric, no insignia. Just one word, Ironveil. 2 weeks later, the mission was rumor. Footage leaked but never confirmed. Officially, Captain Elara Voss no longer existed. Her records erased, her call sign scrubbed, and yet she was still flying. At a remote base with no markings, in hangars built for aircraft that weren't supposed to exist. Elara suited up in silence. Ironveil stood waiting, patched, repainted, upgraded. On her canopy, a single stencil gleamed Ironveil. The comms crackled. Ironveil, you are cleared for departure. No ceiling. Flight path open. Elara smiled faintly. No ceiling. Then I'll be the one watching. The Warthog roared to life, engines screaming, wings carving into the dark sky. Ahead, another ridge loomed, and somewhere in its shadow, another figure waited. But this time, she wasn't just a pilot in the war. She was the warning before it began. The mission is over, but the war stories never end. Subscribe to Valor Untold and march with us into the next battle.